One Piece 1095. What to expect from the chapter. Every single fan of One Piece is currently waiting eagerly for One Piece chapter 1095, and much of that is down to the fact that the previous chapter of the story left the readers absolutely shocked. Finally, one of the five elders, Saint J. Garcia Saturn, made his move and arrived on Egghead Island. It was only a matter of time before Saturn made landfall on Egghead, given the current situation on the island. The Marines, even their admiral, were largely struggling against the opposing forces. As such, Saturn was called into action, and in the previous chapter, fans saw him in the flesh on the surface for the very first time. From here onwards, the story is going to get more exciting than ever before, and One Piece chapter 1095 is going to deliver in many ways. Bonnie vs. Saturn. Towards the end of the last chapter, fans saw Bonnie take action when she met Saturn on Egghead. Much to the surprise of every single fan, she could not hold back her emotions and picked up a nearby lying sword and decided to stab him with it. She thrusted the sword deep into his chest, and while she was doing that, fans got to see dialogue from the flashback of Kuma that she recently witnessed. It appears that Saturn is the man responsible for wiping out Kuma's memory. Initially, Vegapunk appeared to be hesitant about doing that, but Saturn was the one who wanted his memory gone if the Pacifista project was to continue. Knowing that he was the one responsible, Bonnie shoved the sword deep into his chest, and this is an event that shocked every single fan of One Piece. One Piece chapter 1095 is most certainly going to pick up from here. Expectedly, Saturn doesn't look like he's feeling it all that much. This should be expected, given that he's one of the strongest characters in the entire world. Saturn will most likely retaliate in the next chapter. Fans might find out bits about Kuma and Saturn during this short confrontation between Bonnie and him. It is also possible that Saturn will reveal a devil fruit ability in the One Piece 1095, and Bonnie could land herself in very serious trouble. Sanji vs. Saturn. To predict how the chapter will go, fans need to look at the situation around. At the moment, Luffy is down and Kizaru is nowhere to be seen. The focus right now is on Saturn, around whom characters such as Vegapunk, Frankie, Sanji, and Bonnie are at the moment. As such, the vast majority of the focus will be on these characters in the next chapter. Bonnie already drew first blood when she attacked Saturn with her sword, and given that Saturn is going to retaliate, this will be the cue for Sanji to jump into action. Fans know that Sanji is a character who absolutely cannot tolerate a woman being harmed. If Bonnie is hurt by Saturn, then fans could see a confrontation between Sanji and Saturn build up here in One Piece chapter 1095. While this clash appears to be one out of nowhere, fans should remember that these two characters do share quite a few similarities. For one, Saturn is the warrior god of science and defense. Sanji has powers related to science as well. In fact, Vegapunk, Frankie, and Sanji, all three of which are in front of Saturn, are connected to the science of the One Piece world in one way or another. Sanji, being the strongest of them all, is the one who's going to take action in One Piece chapter 1095, and fans might see a proper confrontation between these two characters unfold. The devil fruit abilities of Saturn. One Piece chapter 1095 is also very likely going to focus on Saturn and his devil fruit abilities. Fans know for a fact that Saturn is very strong, as he displayed his powers in the previous chapter. His devil fruit also appeared to be one based on one of the yokai in Japanese folklore, called Ushi Oni. This devil fruit has to be quite powerful, however, but its full capabilities have not been revealed in the story just yet. In fact, fans have not even seen what it is capable of, and that is precisely what One Piece 1095 is going to fix. If Saturn retaliates against Bonnie, perhaps he might do so using a devil fruit ability of his. Even if he doesn't do that, if Sanji does jump into action against Saturn, this would give him an opportunity to show everyone what he's capable of doing. Fans should absolutely expect him to be one of the strongest fighters in the entire world, possibly ranking higher than even the Yonko. Saturn would have plenty of opportunities to show what he is capable of and what powers his devil fruit offers him. Perhaps fans might even find out the name of his yokai-based devil fruit. There is a lot that the next chapter could dissect when it comes to Saturn Saturn and his powers, and that is something that fans are incredibly excited about. Depending on what Oda intends to do with this character here, the next chapter would be pivotal for Saint Saturn in One Piece. Luffy jumps into fight again. Luffy was seen getting knocked out of all energy in the previous chapter. Over the last few chapters, he was fighting against Kizaru, and that certainly took a lot out of him. In the end, he successfully dealt with him, connecting a powerful punch to his head which sent him flying. This also exhausted Luffy, and it seems that he cannot fight at the moment. However, he absolutely has to come back, given that Saturn is in front of him, and he is an even bigger threat than Kizaru. The fans should absolutely expect Luffy to get up and fight once again. One key thing that fans might not have noticed in the previous chapter is that Luffy is not out of Gear 5 just yet. Even though he said he was exhausted and fell to the ground, Luffy was still in Gear 5. This is in stark contrast to when Luffy usually gets exhausted and gets knocked out of his transformations. The fact that he's still in Gear 5 means that a confrontation with Saturn could be brewing here. One Piece chapter 1095 might see Luffy get up once again towards the end and begin the fight against Saturn. These two characters are surely going to clash in Egghead, and that is something that fans should prepare themselves for. After all, Saturn is very well aware of who Nika is, and would absolutely want to eliminate this threat once and for all. He won't get a better opportunity than when Luffy is already exhausted from fighting an admiral. Taking all things into consideration, One Piece chapter 1095 is likely going to be even better than the previous one. And in other news, One Piece, the result of Luffy versus Kizaru revealed. One Piece is currently in the most intense phase of the Egghead Island arc as this story arc ramps close to its end. Fans have been treated to quite a lot of information dumped at the beginning of the arc, and as the story progressed, it was quite clear that a major war was about to ensue. That is precisely what the story is currently tackling as Egghead Island is under attack. Of course, one of the biggest threats that Luffy and the Straw Hat Pirates could face in this arc was one of the three admirals, Kizaru. Fans are very well aware of this character, as he was introduced to them for the very first time before the time skip, where he was directly responsible for wiping out the Straw Hat Pirates on the island of Sabaody Archipelago. However, 2 years later, things are quite different, and the Straw Hat Pirates are on a completely different level. Luffy took it upon himself to fight against Kizaru, and in One Piece chapter 1094, the battle between Luffy and Kizaru has finally ended. The beginning of Luffy versus Kizaru. Luffy and Kizaru started fighting a while ago, and it was quite clear that this was going to be an intense battle for the fans to witness. Even though Luffy attacked Kizaru in his base form, the latter was forced to block it with all his might. Immediately after this clash, fans knew that this battle would escalate to new heights. Luffy immediately entered Snakeman and decided to take on Kizaru in what was an even more intense clash. Luffy used Snakeman because he believed he would easily expend less energy using this form than he does in Gear 5. Kizaru was quite impressed with the Yonko, and he made it quite clear that Luffy was certainly a man worthy of his bounty, and, more importantly, a man strong enough to defeat Kaido himself. However, Snakeman was certainly not enough to take down Kizaru. Fans already knew that, however, Luffy certainly did not. Kizaru used one of his powerful abilities to kick Luffy out of the Frontier Dome, and that did considerable damage to him. He did, however, return stronger than ever before with Gear 5, and the battle between these two characters continued from there onwards. This time around, however, Luffy was in Gear 5, while Kizaru was starting to take him more seriously. Luffy's Gear 5 versus Kizaru. As soon as Luffy tapped into the power of Gear 5, it was quite clear to the fans that this battle would now escalate and, consequently, be made harder for Kizaru. Luffy attempted to hurl him out of the island and into the ocean. The Admiral easily counters that by using his light-based powers to appear in front of Luffy once again. He was seen creating many clones using his Devil Fruit ability, and these clones attacked Luffy at the same time, with one of them even succeeding in cutting him slightly. Luffy, busy with the clones, did not notice that the real Kizaru Kizaru was going to assassinate Vegapunk. Luffy successfully dealt with the clones, showcasing that, even though he might not be the smartest of people in the world of One Piece, he can still fight very well since his battle intellect is very high. Kizaru, meanwhile, attempted to assassinate Vegapunk once again with his laser-based powers when he saw him travel down to the Fabria phase. Once again, Luffy came in between and ate up his light-based attack, turning into a star-like figure himself. From there onwards, the fight was bound to reach its climax since it was made quite clear that Luffy would absolutely not let Kizaru anywhere near Vegapunk while he was still around. The Admiral most likely also realized that in order to successfully complete his mission, he would have to deal with Luffy first. How Luffy vs. Kizaru ended. In One Piece chapter 1094, the fight between Luffy and Kizaru continues. Sadly, none of these characters were the focus of the chapter. The vast majority of the chapter focused on one of the 5 elders, Saturn, who had his demonic powers revealed to the fans. When the story got back to Luffy vs. Kizaru, it was quite clear that a big portion of this fight had been off-screened. Both Luffy and Kizaru were seen panting, meaning that this intense clash had pushed them both to their limits. Kizaru mentioned that he does not have time to fight against Luffy, and that he's there on a mission. He absolutely does not intend to fight against the Yonko, and he knows that he's not equipped with the tools to do so either. So, once again, Kizaru decided to go for Vegapunk in an attempt to assassinate him. Although he did try to shoot him down with one of his lasers, he ended up missing. He did, however, succeed in knocking down the vehicle that Vegapunk was traveling in. Luffy, not giving him another opportunity to attack Vegapunk, caught up with Kizaru and landed a powerful technique called Gomu Gomu no White Star Gun on him. This attack went right through the face of the Admiral, just as it once did against Kaido's as well. Stars were seen forming around the head of the Admiral, which would suggest that this attack gave him quite a concussion. Both Luffy and Kizaru started falling to the ground, as it was quite clear that Luffy was at his limit as well. Meanwhile, Kizaru was injured by this attack and fell to the ground as well. This was quite clearly the end of the fight between Luffy and Kizaru. What's next for Luffy? Looking at the battle between Luffy and Kizaru, it can be said that it was a tie. Both of these ended up falling to the ground at the end of the battle. However, fans will have to see what ends up happening from here onwards, and who gets up to continue fighting. That said, these two characters have not exerted themselves to the fullest. This means both Luffy and Kizaru should very well get up and fight once again. However, their opponents will most likely be different from here onwards. Luffy will likely focus on none other than Saturn. The member of the 5 elders is right in front of him, transformed into a demonic state. This means his level of strength is likely going to be higher than even that of an admiral of the Navy. As always, Luffy has to take on the strongest foe, and that means it is time for him to try his luck against none other than Saturn. Fans should absolutely expect this immense clash to continue in the next few chapters, and it is time for the Egghead Island arc to get even more nerve-wracking than it already has been. In the meantime, fans should expect Kizaru to get up once again as well. A Navy admiral cannot possibly be sidelined completely for the rest of the arc. However, this time around, he would fight against the likes of Sanji and possibly even Zoro. Kizaru is on a mission to assassinate Vegapunk, and the strongest person with Vegapunk at the moment is Sanji. Fans should absolutely expect him to fight against Kizaru soon, and it is going to be an intense battle, given that both of these characters are speed-based fighters and use their legs in battle. The rest of the Straw Hat Pirates should regroup as well and switch around. Lucci should be taken on by someone like Jinbei, and Zoro would then help Sanji in the battle against Kizaru, as neither of them is strong enough to individually take on the Admiral. That's a wrap for this video. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We'll be back with more amazing videos very soon.